Dorothy Day, the founder of the Catholic worker houses around the world, is known for many powerful quotes. Here is one of them. She said, "I really only love God as much as I love the person I love the least." She recognized the connection between loving God and loving our neighbor. People often hear only what they want to hear. For example, a teenager might ask his parents if he can go out with his friends on Saturday night. The parents say yes, but first you have to finish your science project. The teenager hears the yes, I can go, but he doesn't hear about finishing the science project. It's not only young people who hear only what they want to hear. Adults do the same thing. Many of us choose to listen only to those news programs that reinforce our political opinions and ideas. We listen only to the commentators who tell us what we want to hear. And that can be also true when it comes to the words of Jesus. We can hear and accept the words that reinforce our beliefs, but then we can tune out the words that really challenge our ways of thinking. In this Sunday's Gospel, Jesus says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind." Catholics who stress the importance of prayer and scripture reading and the liturgy, who really emphasize the necessity of developing a personal relationship with the Lord, they will hear those words as confirmation that Christians are to concentrate on the spiritual. But Catholics who are greatly interested in social justice and in working to improve the lives of people, they will focus on the other words that Jesus speaks in the gospel, namely, "You shall love your neighbor as yourself." What we hear in the Sunday gospel will likely be determined by what we want to hear. If we stress the spiritual aspect of our faith, we will happily listen to the necessity of loving God with all of our being. But if we stress social justice, we will enthusiastically hear about loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. Both of these emphases are covered in the readings this week. The first reading on Sunday from the book of Exodus reinforces that command to love our neighbor. It speaks about not oppressing the alien, about doing no wrong to the widows and the orphans, about lending money to the poor. But then the second reading from St. Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, it emphasizes the spiritual. It praises those who have turned to God from idols to serve the living and true God and to await his Son from heaven. When asked to name the great commandment, Jesus tells us that we are to love God with all our heart and soul and mind. And then he adds that we are to love our neighbor. The whole law and the prophets depend on these two commandments. Jesus himself lived out those commandments. He prayed, he fasted, he went to the synagogue. He observed the religious festivals of his people. But at the same time, he cared for the hungry, the poor, the powerless, the sick, the sinner. If we only hear the words of Jesus that deal with loving God, our faith can become confined to what happens in church and to what makes us feel good. It can be very easy to say, "I love God." It makes us feel good, but it may not really mean anything because it doesn't require anything of us. We don't do anything. We don't make any changes. We just say, I love God. On the other hand, if we only hear Jesus' words about loving our neighbor, then there's a danger of turning Christianity into just another NGO, a social movement seeking to make the world a better place. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. We need to have both of those commandments. Neither is true, neither is even possible without the other. At the end of the first reading today, God says, if someone, the poor, cries out to me, I will hear him, for I am compassionate. We too must listen for the cry of the poor, and we must respond with compassion and generosity as God does. We need to hear all the words of Jesus, and we need to do our best to put all of those words into practice.